I can't remember her last name, and you know, she in the past had presented herself as a lawyer and had practiced law, even though she didn't have a license to practice law. And so he was, you know, doing a story about this, and he was trying to get an interview with her. The upshot of the whole thing is that she decided to have him accused of criminal harassment, presumably in an effort to silence him as well, and perhaps even prevent the story from being reported. So anyhow, I got a few people coming out of a car here, having a brief look at the picket signs. So anyway, getting back to this thing, I had previously, indeed very soon after my arrest, been in contact with Canadian Journalists for Freedom of Expression, which is an organization of essentially, you know, Canadian journalists who are trying to promote freedom of expression. And I, you know, told them everything that I basically just said here, and they basically agreed that yes, this did appear to be an abuse of power on the part of Sue Montgomery in an effort to silence me, you know, and that she had no real valid grounds to have me arrested for criminal harassment. And you know, they were supposed to put out a statement about that, but for whatever reason it got delayed. But then, as a result of this Radio Canada journalist being arrested in Gatineau just in the last week or so, in a very, very similar misuse of the criminal harassment law, what the CJFE did was they put out a statement. I believe it was posted to the internet yesterday, possibly late Friday, in which they spoke about, you know, this arrest of this Radio Canada journalist, and then they went on to say this is the second time that something like this has happened in Quebec, and they went on to talk about my situation. So that's a good sign. You know, we got a national organization that promotes freedom of speech, and is specifically an organization of journalists, essentially saying that they condemn this criminal harassment charge against me and consider it to be an abusive misuse of Canada's criminal harassment law, just as I do. So here's a guy who ostensibly fights for the rights that I am currently exercising. Good day, sir.
How are you?
I'm exercising the rights you uphold and fight for.
You have that right. That's very
exactly,
good.
and you protect it.
That.
Exactly, sir. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. You too. Yeah. So that's nice. That is very nice. Canadian Armed Forces personnel coming by here. I do hope my camera's still running. Let's just have a look here. Oh yes, we got it. So yes, and this is a point that I've actually made before. You know, Canadian soldiers have fought and died in wars to protect democracy and democratic rights, to even try to extend democracy further, which, you know, may be open to some debate in terms of, you know, bringing democracy to other parts of the world, but certainly Canadian soldiers, you know, one of their roles is to protect Canadian democracy, Canadian democratic rights and freedoms and so on. And, you know, they've literally put their lives on the line and lost their lives, to say nothing of being seriously injured and so on. And yet you got people like Sue Montgomery and a whole lot of Montreal Unitarians who are only too happy to try and suppress those rights by misusing the Canadian Criminal Code in complete disregard for the charter rights and freedoms that soldiers fought and died for. I usually make this point on November 11th, but since this guy happened to come along, I brought it up again. And it was nice that he interacted with me and essentially agreed with me. that will make for a nice little video clip on YouTube. So anyhow, we'll continue this, but I'm very, very happy. Oh, and he was wearing green. It's the day after St. Patrick's Day, and it's the St. Patrick's Day parade, and he was very appropriately wearing green, as I am, by the way. I've got a green jacket on. Oh, look, this person's been wearing green too. We're having quite the nice St. Patrick's Day protest, or day after St. Patrick's Day protest here in Montreal. Yeah, talk about wearing the green. I think it's one of my better protests so far. And yeah, I don't think we're going to keep it up too much longer, because I do want to go to the St. Patrick's Day parade. It starts at noon, and I really should get there a little bit earlier. And it takes time to get there. So I don't think I'm going to be here much past 11 at the latest, and I might even leave before 11. So I maybe should check the time. But yeah, it was nice to have this little incident with this armed forces fellow coming along wearing the green, and agreeing that yes, you know, his role and the role of all members of the Canadian Armed Forces is to protect Canada's, you know, as a nation, but you know, more specifically to protect democracy and liberty and freedom in Canada, to say nothing of abroad. So yeah, nice little incident. This dog's showing its appreciation for the Unitarian Church of Montreal. Yeah. A nice little, is it a greyhound?
Yeah.
Yeah, a black greyhound.
Yeah.
So, anyhow, it's funny, in the whole time I've protested, you know, I've had these freestanding picket signs leaned up against trees and signposts and lampposts and fire hydrants and so on, you know, for the better part of 20 years. And in that whole time period, there's only been once where a dog peed on one of my picket signs. And it was kind of almost appropriate, because it peed on the lower part of a sign that specifically said abusive clergy. So the dog literally pissed on abusive clergy, which I thought, well, that's pretty symbolic, you know, that's that's kind of cute, you know. So I really didn't mind the dog peeing on abusive clergy, as it were. So anyhow, yes, definitely, you know, it's like there's not a lot happening in terms of people coming, in terms of the church members. There's been a few people showing up. There's not a lot of pedestrian traffic. There's not a lot of car traffic. There's certainly not many bikes. It's still a pretty cold day in mid-March, so not a lot of bike traffic in the bike lane that was put in here some years ago. Not that long ago, actually. Yeah, I'm getting a good little monologue here. We'll just check the time and see how many minutes we got left. Okay, we got about 4 minutes of monologue left in the first half-hour segment of protesting, but I think it's gone quite well already, with a couple of interesting little interactions. So yeah, we'll do a second half-hour segment of video, or at least start one, and we'll just play it by ear, but I don't think I'm going to be protesting for more than an hour this morning. And we had a nice little chat with some police officers from Station 11 last Sunday. A police supervisor's van and a police car came by, and I had a chat with a couple of the officers in the car who came out of the car to, you know, just check and see how things are going. They'd received a complaint, and, you know, they asked me, you know, what had happened, and I said, well, basically nothing. You know, the only thing that happened is, you know, somebody elbowed me and I called him an asshole, which is the truth. You know, one member of the Unitarian Church of Montreal who clearly does not approve of my protest, elbowed me quite unnecessarily because I had stepped off to the side to allow him plenty of room to pass on the sidewalk. But he nonetheless made a point of elbowing me as he went by. And so I called him an asshole 2 or 3 times, and that's it. Police didn't seem overly concerned about the fact that I called an asshole, and went on their way. And then a few minutes later, another police van shows up, and it was a group intervention van. This is the, essentially, riot squad. And the driver of the group intervention van got out, and he was, basically asking me what the protest is about. So I told him pretty much the same thing, and basically had a reasonably pleasant chat about it. He was polite, he was respectful, he was professional. He in no way intimidated me, really. One could just see the interaction itself as low-level intimidation, but I didn't see it that way. And after we had our pleasant chat, he too went on his way, so there was no further interaction. The videos are up on YouTube, so anyone can go have a look. We'll take it from there. But one of the things that he did mention in our conversation is that we were likely to see each other again at the anti-police brutality protest on March 15th, just a couple of days ago, three days ago. And I don't know if, I didn't recognize him because there's so many police officers. I didn't see that specific police officer. But, he might have seen me, and certainly some other SPVM police officers saw me and indeed recognized me. One of them addressed me by name and asked me if I was still making threats against Valerie Plante. So he got a story a little garbage because A, it's not Valerie Plante who had me arrested for alleged criminal harassment, it's Sue Montgomery. And B, I've never threatened anyone, neither Valerie Plante nor Sue Montgomery. So I told him, don't worry, I'm not threatening anyone, it's just and that was that. And I think we're at the end here, or just about, of this video segment. So yeah, just a little recap of some of the events.